Crystal Craven, a singer, a songwriter, and a worship leader who's passionate about sharing what God inspires. And this is your weekly devotional. This week, we are going to look specifically at Jairus and the situation with his daughter. So we're going to read from Luke 8:40 through 42, and then skip over that section with the woman on the discharge of blood and read verses 49 through 56. It says, "Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. As Jesus went, the people pressed around him." And then this is a section where the verses talk about the woman with a discharge of blood and how she was healed. And then, picking up in verse 49, it says, "While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, 'Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore.' But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, 'Do not fear. Only believe, and she will be well.' And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James and the father and mother of the child. And all were weeping and mourning for her. But he said, 'Do not weep, for she is not dead but sleeping.' And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, 'Child, arise.' And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. And he directed that something should be given her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened." Now, look at Jairus' faith here. It is amazing. He was a ruler in the synagogue, and he was no doubt well aware of what his peers thought of Jesus. Yet when his only daughter was dying, he sought after Jesus and he fell at his feet, just imploring him to come to his house. He had a faith that Jesus, of whom he had heard the miracles already performed, could heal his daughter who was dying, and no amount of social shame was going to deter him from seeking Jesus out. Now, on the way, there's this interrupted journey, because as they make their way with crowds of people pressing in around Jesus, I can only imagine what might have been going through Jairus' mind. I'm sure he was wanting to get to his house with Jesus as quickly as possible, and yet having a crowd pressing in around the very man he's trying to lead to his house may have been a bit nerve-wracking. But then to have Jesus stop and ask about someone who touched him, I don't know about Jairus, but I think I would have been just ready to burst into tears at that kind of delay. And then right as Jesus was telling the woman who had just been healed that her faith had made her well, was then when someone from Jairus' house comes to deliver the bad news that his daughter is now dead. I can only imagine that heart-sinking feeling that he had at that moment. And maybe there's the possible flood of emotions from sadness, obviously, and to possible anger that, someone else got healed and yet his daughter was dying in the process. Now, even though that messenger from Jairus' house had said, "Don't trouble the teacher anymore," Jesus, just without skipping a beat, answered, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well." Jesus encouraged Jairus' faith in a time when it would be understandable for his faith to falter. This statement, "Do not fear," and, "Do not be afraid," these are the statements that occur 68 times in the Bible. And when an angel would come to people with a message from God, this was often the very first thing out of their mouths. And we see this is the first thing that Jesus said to Jairus after he received the news that his only daughter's death had come is, "Don't fear." Now, that word believe means to put confidence in and to show an absolute trust in. Jesus was telling him that instead of fearing, just to put his confidence and trust in him and that his daughter was going to be made well. Now, this took some serious faith because Jairus had just heard the news that his daughter was dead. Now fear and faith don't mix together well, and Jesus specifically focused Jairus to not fear and to only believe. And the order of this is important because in order to fully believe, the fear needs to be dealt with. Fear induces a doubt, right? But faith has no room for doubt. When Jesus said Jairus' daughter would be well, that word that he used in the Greek, sozo, was literally saying that he was going to deliver her from destruction and restore her to health, which, since she was already dead, that meant he was going to raise her from the dead. Now, Jairus showed a tremendous amount of faith here because he listened and obeyed Jesus when he continued to allow him to come to his house where now his dead daughter was laying. He had a faith and he was doing what Jesus said, only believe. Even despite the mourners who had already been summoned and were crying aloud, who then also mockingly laughed at Jesus when he said, "Do not weep, for she is not dead but sleeping." And Jairus did what Jesus told him to, and he was blessed in his doing because Jesus delivered his daughter from death and he restored her to life and to health. Now, this saying of Jesus, it rings true to us today because even if others seem to imply, "Do not trouble the teacher," when you go through trials in this life, trouble the teacher. Make your requests known to God. He wants to hear from you. And even if God seems to not be answering right away or even allowing the situation that you're in to get worse, you can have faith that He is indeed at work. You can and you should put your confidence and your absolute trust in Him who tells you, "Do not fear, only believe." For blogs, written devotionals, and originally written songs, visit crystalcravenmusic.com, and that's Crystal with a K.